way back in 1995, I was working for a company called IXI, and we got acquired by an organization called SCO, Santa Cruz Operations. As we got acquired, I rolled into an organization that was owned by a gentleman called Graham Brown. At the time, we were launching a new product called Tarantella. So I get called down, I meet up with Graham Brown, I explain what I'm doing, and I'm in my formative years. This is 30 years ago, almost to the month, and I'm cocky. You know, people who know me now go, "What, even worse?" And yes, that is possible. But anyway, I explained what I was doing, and he asked me for further questions, of which I kind of replied something along the lines of, "Well, I've got something unique. I've learned something unique. I'm going to keep it myself because that makes me completely invaluable to the business, and I'm untouchable. You have to pay me a lot of money. You can't afford to fire me." Of which he responds back along the lines of, "You're an arse." And then what he basically said to me is, if you really do truly want to make yourself unique for the business, then what you got to do is kind of, you learn something the way in which you're learning it, you find something which is interesting, you document it, you try it again, you hone that until it works really well, and then you train other people to do it. And in essence, you make yourself redundant. And then what you do is bravely, you put your hand up and you say, you know, I've got capacity, give me something else to do. What he described there and how I applied it is the most profound kind of accidental mentor advice that I have had in my entire career. So we did fire up a number of OEM relationships. I did around things like Unisys and Acer Networks, and we also did some stuff with Sun Microsystems. And they had a thin client, and we ended up working very closely with them, and we got good traction. And if I carry the story forward, what I did is basically understood what we were doing, trained other people to do it, and that built a business unit. And then Mick Adamson came in to run the business unit, who's a close personal friend of mine, an absolutely wonderful guy, and has been a mentor to me through the years. But over time, that then expanded, and our traction and growth on the Tarantella business was such that SCO elected to sell their legacy business across to an open source provider, and or a Linux provider, I should say, and then ended up selling that business to Sun Microsystems. I set up Mainspring Ventures, and then I actually ended up with quite a fruitful relationship as a consultant working with BEA Systems. But again, the whole concept of this was basically very, very fast turning contracts, where you would learn something pretty aggressively, then you would end up espousing it, teaching people, executing against it for nearly 2 years. And it was successful enough for me to actually jump in and then end up in the business development side, running the Intel relationship. And I ended up picking up the JRocket business, of which, back to my same thing, which is learning it, moving it in the right direction, honing it, and then basically stepping back and delivering it. And at that time, I handed that business off to a gentleman called George Saab. And again, I would caveat and say that some of the people I'm mentioning, it's not the fact that I trained them or mentored them, it's the fact that basically what I did is I found the opportunity, tidied the business up, taught somebody else what I was up to. I handed the keys off on that time to George Saab. George is now over at Oracle, and he's running the Java business for them. Eminently successful, absolutely fantastic guy. And again, I couldn't be more thrilled with what we did there. Ended up over at EMC. And again, I did the same thing at EMC, handed those businesses back to people that I think could do an eminently better job than me. So Beth Phelan, I handed the data protection business to, Jeff Bedreau, the primary storage business, and then also Fidelma Russo, all better than me for what they were needed to accomplish for the business. Right. This all came from that pointer. And I think that if I hadn't have done it, my career would not have moved at the pace that it did. One of the things that I had as a job, and it wasn't a really nice part of it, was basically what we call a diving catch or a diving save. And it's when an employee has resigned and they're a key employee, and then I get the call, which is, hey, could you go in there and have a conversation with them and see if you can turn them around? And I always use the same vernacular, which is the job you're going to Is it a job that you're running to or running from? Funny story, I guess, and a bit of a diversion. One guy I was talking to, and I was sent off to go chat with him. And I sat down and said, is it a run to or run from job? And he sort of said, well, my college roommate was Elon Musk, and he's asked me to set up Asia for him. And I leaned over the desk and said, okay, we're done. Congratulations. And by the way, if there's a job over there, then let me know. And sometimes I get an answer, which is, well, a bit of both, right? I mean, I wasn't looking for a job, but I got frustrated where I was, and I kind of just opened my ears, right? And I heard, and there was jobs, and I ended up going there, but I feel bad about it. And then when you dig into it, a lot of times what you find is the employees weren't getting listened to. And so you had an employee that was sitting there doing the job, trucking along really nicely, but they were never offered any opportunities. So what they did is they just watched kind of better jobs go past them. Because when you set up startups, you generally go for unique people constantly, which is, you have a skill that nobody else has, I'm going to hire you. And as you scale an organization, you kind of look for the gaps. And what you don't want to do is to end up having any gaps. So you basically get backfills into these positions. But there's this weird middle period where you've kind of grown fast, but you're now at a point where you actually have all of these areas where you have unique people who are sitting with unique ideas or unique skills, and you don't have any coverage. And the last thing in the world you're going to do is try and move them out of that position. And so if you're an employee, you feel that, right? So in other words, you've come into the organization, you've got something unique, you're holding on to it because you think that it's good for you, and you're wondering why your job or your career is not going anywhere. And it's pretty simple. It's because what you're doing is so critical to the company that no one in that organization will move you, because they don't want to create the hole for themselves. And so, there are cases where you could look at it and say, well, look, I have a unique skill. I don't need to move anywhere. I'm quite happy with the job I'm doing. And God bless you. That's fantastic. But if you are in a job where you are unique and you are providing that service to the company and you do want to progress forward, then that might potentially hold you back. And I would say that will definitely hold you back. I've always had this concept of the job that you don't want is the job that you can do really easy. And the job that you do want is the job that scares the life out of you. And you worry about, one, can I do it? Am I capable? Are they sure that they think I can do it? Because what you want is somebody coming into work who's thinking, who's on their feet constantly, not someone who's coming in and going, I can do it in my sleep. There was a LinkedIn article about like 5 years ago where somebody basically said, the best employee you can hire is somebody that's basically, learning a new job every year. The worst employee is somebody that did a job for a year and has just repeated it for 25. And if I go back to the EMC days, I had that multiple times. And one of the things I used to do is, I'm pretty sleep deprived, but I would sit in the office early and watch employees come in. And I distinctly looked for people who were walking in kind of with their head down. And you could see if somebody was energized with the job when they came in, their head was up and they were springing in. And there was one day, and I'm not going to mention the guy's name, and I'm pretty sure he'll end up watching this, but I saw him coming out of his car and his head was right down, and he was gutted. And this guy was a very, very senior player in my team, very critical, and definitely on a lifeboat test, he'd be someone that I'd keep in the lifeboat and throw myself overboard. And so I called him into my office and I sat down with him and I said, dude, I just saw you walk into the office and you had your head down. What's going on? And he told me this story, which is basically he's sitting in an organization, he's not giving any opportunity to mentally grow, and he's been looking around and thinking about leaving, but he really doesn't. And so I tried something different. I kind of fired him from his job and said, that's not going to be your job anymore. And I had a bunch of managers at the time, and what I did is I wrote to them all. In fact, I think it was on a meeting, and basically said, look, this guy who's really critical to the company, he's no longer going to do the job he's going to do, and you're going to interview with him. And what I mean by you're going to interview with him, not he's going to interview with you, and you're going to tell him what jobs that you've got available that he could potentially do, and then he's going to pick one of those. And so I told him the same thing. He agreed to do it. And then what happened is they all interviewed with him, and he sat down and he was given 4 or 5 offers of jobs that he could do. And he took one of them and he was absolutely elated, and the guy was buzzing from that point on. I didn't lose him from the organization, and that meant a lot to me. And then even latterly for acquisitions that we did, it's so many times with acquisitions, the company that's coming inbound is seen as being subordinate to the staff that are inside the organization. And sometimes you've got people in your own company who've been there a little bit too long, the game's slow enough for them to not really care. And so to sharpen all of that up, one of the things you can do is look at it and say, hey, look, I've got a product manager coming in and you're a product manager. You guys are going to play squid games for this. But the intention of it is to basically stimulate the brain cells and allow people to really feel as though they're valued. And it's not just about money, but it's about growth and education and trust in them. And so basically, if you're an employee and you're sitting there and you want to understand how to progress yourself, then it's great to have a unique skill and a unique idea. But the best thing to do is what Brownie basically said is document it, teach other people to it, and then kind of make yourself redundant. But I think the thing that it really does is it makes you really brave, where you'll put your hand up. A lot of people won't put their hand up and say, I've got capacity, because they think someone's going to shoot them. But the reality is, if you can put your hand up and say, hey, I've got capacity, give me something new to do, then if you get it, then you're stimulated, and it starts that train, which is really what I did and what I've enjoyed so much. If you're a manager, look, here's the thing. Don't put your own ease in front of your employees' growth, right? Because the reality is, the reason that you're not going to put them forward for jobs is because you don't want the hassle of hiring somebody into that job, but you're going to screw yourself anyway. And then from a CEO perspective, one, that, two, pay attention to your employee base and ensure that, they're coming in and they're bouncing and they're on their toes. And it's not by threatening to fire them, but it's basically giving them stimulating work that they feel scared about, and then give them an environment where, if they do it and they fail, help them drive forward and stimulate. And if you constantly do that, then you get this momentum, which is just so critical for it. I owe everybody that has been an accidental mentor a huge amount to my career. Part of why I wanted to sort of put this series together is because there's been quite a few of these. This one is, for me, the most profound. When I look at it, it really is. If one person grabs this, looks at it and says, I'm going to give that a go and see if that works, or thank you very much, I appreciate it, I'm going to be absolutely thrilled. I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.
Oh, 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 oh.